You made the financial decision anyway, even knowing it was wrong. The standard explanation is scarcity. You grew up without enough, and that got into you. That explanation is probably true. It's also significantly more complicated than anyone's told you. The mainstream story goes something like this. Children who grow up in poverty or in financially unstable households develop a particular relationship with money, one shaped by uncertainty, by not knowing whether there will be enough next month or next week. And that relationship doesn't just disappear when circumstances change. It follows them into adulthood, into their bank accounts, into their marriages. The claim has intuitive weight. If you learned early that resources are unpredictable, it makes sense that you develop strategies around that unpredictability. Maybe you spend impulsively because holding on to money never felt safe. Maybe you avoid thinking about finances altogether because financial stress was associated in childhood with things that felt genuinely threatening. Or maybe you hoard compulsively, checking your account balance 3 times a day even when the number is fine. Research has long suggested these patterns are real. Studies on early life adversity show that childhood poverty is associated with altered stress responses, changes in how the brain processes reward, and heightened sensitivity to threat. The general picture, widely cited and widely believed, is that growing up poor creates specific cognitive and behavioral tendencies that make financial decision-making harder in adulthood, particularly under pressure. Particularly when the stakes feel high. That picture isn't wrong, exactly, but it has a gap in it, a significant one. Abstract overarching neural pathways, rendered in soft blue light against dark backgrounds. Here is where the story gets more interesting and more honest. Much of what we think we know about childhood poverty and adult financial decision-making is built on a relatively small number of studies. And some of those foundational studies have not held up as cleanly as their reputations suggest. In 2025, a pre-registered replication attempt, meaning researchers committed to their methods before seeing any data, which is the gold standard for avoiding unconscious bias, set out to reproduce one of the most cited findings in this area. The original research, from 2011, had argued that people who grew up in poverty make systematically different financial decisions when they perceive environmental threat. Specifically, that they become more impulsive, more present-focused, more likely to take the smaller reward now over the larger reward later. The replication found something more ambiguous. The effect did not reproduce cleanly. Some patterns appeared, some didn't, and the relationship between childhood scarcity and threat-induced financial behavior turned out to be considerably less straightforward than the original framing implied. This matters, not because it means childhood poverty doesn't affect financial behavior. The broader evidence suggests it does, but because it tells us something important about the mechanism. The simple version, that scarcity programs a predictable set of financial instincts, may be too simple. The actual relationship is probably more variable, more context-dependent, and more individual than a clean cause and effect model would suggest. And here's the measurement problem underneath all of this. The original study, and many like it, used hypothetical scenarios. Imaginary money, simulated decisions. There's a real question about how well those scenarios capture what people actually do when real financial pressure lands on them, with actual consequences, actual stakes, actual stress in their bodies. When the measurement tool is abstract, the conclusions stay abstract. And abstract conclusions have limits when you're trying to understand something as visceral and specific as the financial anxiety that runs in families. So what does the evidence actually show? When you look at it carefully, the neurobiological picture is genuine and worth taking seriously. Research synthesizing multiple meta-analyses on early life adversity has found consistent evidence that childhood hardship, including poverty, is associated with measurable changes in brain development. The systems affected include those involved in stress regulation, emotional processing, and reward sensitivity. These are not small effects. They appear across studies, across methods, and across populations. Macrophytiotion's Nacrospata study added nuance to the reward piece. Specifically, researchers found that early life scarcity affected behavioral responses to natural rewards in adolescence, but the effects were sex-dependent and not uniform. The nervous system does adapt to early scarcity. It just doesn't adapt in a single predictable direction. A 2022 review on overspending, debt, and poverty found that financial stress and poverty are associated with specific cognitive patterns: reduced cognitive bandwidth, heightened present focus, greater vulnerability to impulsive spending. But crucially, the review is careful to distinguish between poverty causing these patterns and poverty co-occurring with them. The causal arrow is harder to establish than it first appears. Overheat. Overhead flat lay of scattered receipts, a calculator, and a notebook. Slightly chaotic, natural light. A 2020 paper in Developmental Science made the methodological problem explicit. Researchers studying child poverty have used wildly inconsistent measures across studies. Different definitions of poverty, different time windows, different outcome variables. When the inputs aren't standardized, comparing results across studies becomes genuinely unreliable. What looks like a robust finding may partly be an artifact of how researchers chose to measure things. And the 2019 neuropsychological work on early adversity and depression adds another layer. The cognitive deficits associated with early hardship, including impaired reward processing and heightened threat sensitivity, may be better understood as vulnerability factors than fixed outcomes. Vulnerability is different from destiny. Abstract visualization of a probability distribution curve. Clean, minimal, scientific aesthetic. What the evidence does not prove: that growing up in financial scarcity inevitably produces a specific set of adult financial behaviors. What it does suggest: that early hardship changes the terrain. It shifts probabilities. It increases certain vulnerabilities. It makes some patterns more likely. But it doesn't make them inevitable, and it doesn't make them identical across people. That distinction is not a small one. So what does this actually mean for you? If you grew up without financial stability, there is probably something real in the idea that your nervous system learned things about money that haven't fully updated. The stress response is genuine. The hypervigilance around scarcity, the impulse to spend before it disappears, or to avoid looking at your finances because looking always meant bad news. That isn't irrational. It was adaptive once. The trauma-informed view of financial behavior is worth sitting with here. What looks like poor money management from the outside often isn't laziness or stupidity. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do, protecting you from a threat that may no longer exist. The body learned something. It is still running that lesson. But here is the reframe the evidence supports. You are not a fixed output of your childhood financial environment. The brain systems involved are plastic. The patterns are real, but they are not locked in place. And perhaps more importantly, the version of yourself who is anxious about money today is not making the same decisions as the child who first learned to be anxious about money. The context has changed, even when the feeling hasn't. From 20 years out, some of what feels financially urgent right now will look very different. Some of the anxiety will have mattered enormously. Some of it will have been the nervous system running old software on new hardware. Knowing the difference is hard, but it begins with understanding that the story is more complicated and more individual than the simple version allows. Here is where I land, reluctantly. The evidence that childhood scarcity shapes adult financial psychology is real enough to take seriously. The neurobiological changes are documented. The patterns are plausible. The experience of people who lived it is not nothing, but the mechanism is murkier than the popular version suggests. The foundational studies have replication problems. The measurements are often abstract, and the relationship between early poverty and specific adult financial behaviors appears to be far more variable than a clean causal model would imply. What we're left with is a true thing that we don't fully understand yet, which is, honestly, where most interesting questions in psychology live. The harder question, the one the research hasn't settled, is whether understanding the origin of a financial pattern actually changes it, or whether insight and behavior change are more separate than we'd like to believe. The research behind this video draws from Journal of Experimental Psychology, Applied Lancet, London, England, Current Opinion in Psychology, Health Policy and Planning, Developmental Science, Frontiers in Neuroendocrinology, Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience, Neuropsychopharmacology, official publication of the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology. Every claim traces to a published source. Full citations are in the description below. If the way this channel thinks about neuroscience resonates with you, subscribing helps this work reach people who'd appreciate it. New videos on the science of mind every week.